I'm 26, and I feel like I'm suffocating in my own home. My older brother, Alex, died 2 years ago. He was 28. Ever since the accident, my parents' grief has been the only thing in our family that matters. He was always the golden child, the one who got the trophies, the straight A's, the one my parents bragged about. Now in death, he's basically a saint. My parents are in the process of downsizing from our family home, and it has been an absolute nightmare. They can't part with a single thing of his. A week ago, my mom called me crying, asking if they could store just a few of Alex's more important things at my apartment temporarily. I said yes, because what am I supposed to say? I have a 2-bedroom apartment, and I figured it would be a few boxes for my spare room. Instead, a small moving truck showed up. They didn't just bring boxes, they brought his desk, his bookcases, and his queen-sized bed frame. They have completely taken over my spare room, which was my home office, and are actively turning it into a memorial. I came home from work yesterday and found my mom hanging his framed college sports jerseys on the wall. They're talking about it like it's a given, that this is just Alex's room now. They've been staying with me to get the room set up, which means they are sleeping in my bedroom while I'm on the couch, because my mattress is better for their backs. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm not allowed to be anything but supportive, or I'm desecrating his memory. While we were clearing out the attic at their old house last weekend, I was given the job of sorting through his junk boxes. It was mostly old college textbooks and electronics. At the bottom of a big plastic tub, I found his old laptop. It was a heavy, ancient model I hadn't seen him use since before he graduated college, covered in dust. My dad told me to just toss it in the e-waste pile, but something made me pause. I ended up quietly slipping it into my own backpack. Last night, I couldn't sleep. I was on my lumpy couch, listening to my dad snore down the hall in my own bed. I pulled the laptop out, found a charger that fit, and plugged it in. I fully expected it to be dead or password protected. But it wasn't. It booted right up to an old cluttered desktop, and sitting in a folder on the desktop, I just saw a file named with my own name. My heart was doing this awful thudding thing against my ribs. I felt like I was 15 again, and about to get in trouble. With my parents asleep in my own bed just down the hall, I clicked the folder. It was full of files. Not just a few, but dozens. Most were simple text documents, but there were also folders of pictures and audio files. My stomach dropped. I clicked on one of the text files, and it opened. It wasn't a letter or a diary entry. It was a log. He had been writing about me. Not just my sister did this today, but detailed, obsessive notes. S came home at 4:15 p.m., looked upset, smelled like smoke, tried to hide it with perfume. Heard her on the phone with Jenna. They're planning to go to that party on Friday. S lied to Mom, said she was sleeping over. S got a C on her history midterm. She hid the paper in the bottom of her backpack. She's not trying hard enough. I just sat there, frozen on my own couch, reading entry after entry. It went on for years. He had documented every single time I messed up, every lie I told, every secret I had. He was my parents' perfect son, and he was building a case against me. All those times my parents just knew I was lying about something. All those times I got grounded and felt like they were psychic. It was him. He was feeding them everything. He was their informant. I felt this wave of heat, this pure boiling anger I haven't felt since ever, really. My whole life, I was the problem child, the rebel, while he was the responsible one. He wasn't being a protective older brother. He was a spy. He made sure I looked bad so he could look better. I scrolled through the files, sickened, and then I saw a folder that was password protected. It wasn't my name. It was just one word: insurance. I suddenly remembered my mom complaining earlier that she couldn't find Alex's important documents box. She was getting worked up, saying she needed to find his bank statements and his old car title. I told her I was sure it was at their house, just to calm her down. But now, I have a really bad feeling. I tried a few passwords: his birthday, our old dog's name, Golden Boy. But nothing worked. I was about to give up and just throw the laptop against the wall when I heard a floorboard creak in the hallway. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it under the couch cushions, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it would wake them up. It was my mom. She padded into the living room, squinting in the dark, and looked at me on the couch. I pretended I had just woken up, rubbing my eyes and asking if she was okay. My skin was crawling, and I was terrified she could somehow see what I was doing, like I was a teenager again, caught. She just sighed, this really heavy, sad sound, and sat down in the armchair across from me. She said she couldn't sleep, that she kept thinking about Alex. I just nodded, my insides twisting. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and ask if she knew her perfect son was a manipulative snake. But I couldn't. She looked so broken. She started talking about how grateful she was that I was letting them do this, letting them keep his memory alive by setting up his room. She said it was so wonderful how much I loved him, to give up my space for him. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from saying something I'd regret. She said I was a good daughter, and that just about broke me. Here I was, hiding this laptop full of his secrets, feeling this toxic rage, and she's calling me a good daughter. She then started to worry, rambling about how she still couldn't find his important papers box. She was worried about his old 401k from a job he had, his car title, and his bank info. She said she felt like she was failing him by not being able to settle his affairs properly. She must have talked for 20 minutes, just rambling about his accounts and his system. She said Alex was always so organized, always so secure. She mentioned how he always used the same weird password theme for everything important. I just kept nodding, desperate for her to go back to bed so I could get back to that insurance folder. Finally, she got up, gave my shoulder a squeeze, and went back to my bedroom. I waited until I heard the door click shut and the snoring start up again. I pulled the laptop out, my hands shaking. That word she said kept ringing in my ears. Secure. I thought about him, about his pride, about the things he protected. And I thought about the one thing he was obsessed with that nobody else cared about. His ridiculous beat-up car he had in college. He'd spent thousands trying to fix it and called it his investment. It was a total lemon. I typed in the car's model and year. Access denied. Then I tried the nickname he had for it. The Beast. Access denied. I was getting frustrated. I was about to give up when I remembered what my mom said about his system. It was a theme. It wasn't just the car. It was the license plate. He had a vanity plate he thought was so clever. I typed it in. The folder unlocked. It wasn't a logbook. It wasn't a diary. It was a spreadsheet. And my stomach turned to ice. It was an Excel spreadsheet. Meticulous, organized, and absolutely devastating. There were 3 tabs at the bottom: Alex Investments, S-Debts, and Parental Ledger. I clicked on S-Debts first. It was a list going back to when I was 14. He had tracked every single extra expense I ever cost our parents. The $200 for the clarinet I quit after 1 semester. The $80 to fix the side mirror I broke on my dad's car. The $200 for the community college course I failed. He even estimated the cost of emotional distress from my rebellious phase. The total at the bottom was over $30,000, and next to it, he'd written a note. To be deducted from any potential inheritance. Non-negotiable. I felt the blood drain from my face. I was shaking so hard I could barely use the trackpad. I clicked on Alex Investments. It wasn't his investments. It was a log of all the money they had given him. My college tuition that I had to take out loans for. They paid his, in full, at a private university. The down payment on my car. They bought him a brand new car as a graduation present. He had been getting a monthly stipend of $2,000 ever since he graduated, logged as consulting fee family management. It was a payoff, a salary for being the perfect son. But Parental Ledger was the worst. It wasn't just a log. It was a list of their assets. He had their bank account numbers, their retirement account logins, PIN numbers. He had notes on my mom's inheritance from my grandmother. He knew everything. This wasn't a diary. This wasn't a kid being a tattletale. This was a long con. The insurance wasn't to protect them. It was to protect himself, to make sure he always had leverage, to make sure he could control the narrative and the money. My brother, the saint they are currently building a shrine to in my spare room, was systematically documenting how to bleed them dry while painting me as a financial black hole. I felt like I was going to throw up all over my couch. This whole time, I thought I was the failure. He made me the failure. I was about to close the file, just shut the laptop and throw it off my balcony, when I saw it. Back in the insurance folder, behind the spreadsheet, was another folder. This one was labeled Audio. I opened it. It was full of MP3 files, dozens of them, all labeled with just dates. The most recent one was from 2 weeks before he died. My hand was trembling as I double-clicked it. I heard a muffled sound, then a click. It was a recording, and the first voice I heard was my father's. I had my headphones on, but I yanked them out, my ears ringing. The audio file was still playing. It was a phone call, recorded. The quality was terrible, but the voices were completely clear. It was Alex, and it was my dad. It wasn't a conversation. It was a shakedown. Alex's voice was one I'd never heard before. It was cold, sharp, and had this awful, impatient edge to it. My dad sounded exhausted, pleading. Alex was talking about the parental ledger. He was walking my dad through specific high-value withdrawals from their retirement accounts. My dad was making excuses, saying those were investments and family expenses. Then Alex just laughed. He said he appreciated the family expenses line, especially since he could see a direct transfer to an account I didn't even know existed. He told my dad that I was a black hole of a family expense, and that he, Alex, had been managing the family for years without proper compensation. He was using air quotes in his voice. My dad's voice cracked. He told Alex this wasn't right, that he was his son. Alex's reply made me stop breathing. He told my dad that he had 2 children, one who cost him money and one who made him money, and that the $2,000 a month stipend was no longer acceptable compensation for his silence. Silence? Silence about what? Then Alex specified. He wasn't just talking about my debts. He brought up my mom's inheritance from her parents, which she had naively, stupidly, put into a joint account with my dad. Alex said he'd found a series of transfers, moving her inheritance money into one of my dad's personal hidden accounts. The same account my dad had been using for his investments. My brother, the saint, the golden child, wasn't just a spy. He was an extortionist. He'd found our dad's secret, and he was using it to bleed him dry. The consulting fee was hush money. My dad had been paying his own son to keep him from destroying our family. I felt nothing, just cold. My entire image of my family was a lie. My dad was a thief. My brother was a blackmailer. And I was just the distraction, the problem child they all used as an excuse. I was so wrapped up in the horror of it, listening to my father beg his son, that I didn't hear the floorboards creak again. I just felt a shadow fall over me. I looked up, and my mom was standing right there at the end of the hall, her robe pulled tight. She wasn't crying this time. Her face was like stone. And she asked me, in a voice I didn't recognize, what I was doing and why I had Alex's old laptop. I just froze. My blood turned to ice. My mom was standing about 10 feet away, and the laptop was open on my lap, the audio file still paused on the screen. There was no way to hide it, no way to explain it away. The silence in my apartment was deafening, except for the sound of my dad snoring in my bedroom, which suddenly sounded monstrous. My mom's face was completely unreadable. She wasn't sad or angry. She just looked empty. She took a step closer and asked again, her voice low and flat. "Where did you get that? That's Alex's?" I couldn't lie. I couldn't. I was so tired of all the lies. "It was in a junk box at the house. Dad told me to toss it." She stared at the screen, and I saw her eyes focus on the file names. Audio. Parental ledger. S. Debts. I think she recognized his naming system. She took another step, her hand coming up to her mouth. What are you doing, Sarah?" All the anger and hurt from the last 26 years just boiled over. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just looked her dead in the eye and said, "I'm finding out the truth." I clicked off the audio file and opened the parental ledger spreadsheet. Her eyes followed my finger on the trackpad. I highlighted a row. It was a line item under my dad's name, labeled Personal Investment Act, followed by a bank name and an account number. My mom's breath hitched. She stared at that account number for what felt like an eternity. I don't know how I knew, but I knew she recognized it. Maybe she'd seen it on a piece of mail. Maybe she'd had a gut feeling. But she knew. That's, she whispered, her voice trembling. That's his private account. He told me that was for his stocks. I didn't say anything. I just clicked over to the audio folder and hovered the mouse over the last recording. The one where my brother extorted my father. I looked back at my mom, and my expression must have said everything, because her hand flew to her mouth to stifle a sob. She knew he was recording them. She knew it was bad. She stumbled back and half fell into the armchair across from me, the one she'd been crying in just an hour before. She looked tiny. She wrapped her arms around herself and started rocking, just slightly. "Oh, Alex," she whispered, but it wasn't in the sainted, grieving way. It was a whisper of pure horror. She looked up at me, her eyes desperate. "He found out, didn't he?" she asked. I just nodded, my throat tight. He found out. About the inheritance. He was making Dad pay him to keep quiet. My mom closed her eyes, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. But then her eyes snapped open, and all the grief, all the horror, was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard rage I had never, ever seen. She stood up, perfectly calm, and walked over to me. She didn't look at the laptop. She looked at the closed door to my bedroom, where my dad was still sleeping, oblivious, and she said one word. "Play it." My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the laptop. I looked at my mom, at her white-knuckled grip on the armchair, at the terrifying calm on her face, and I did what she asked. I hit play. The audio wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of 3 a.m., it was deafening. Alex's cold, calculating voice filled my living room, then my dad's, weak and pleading. We both stood there, frozen, like statues, listening to the whole ugly transaction. We heard Alex mock him. We heard my dad beg him not to tell my mom. We heard Alex raise his consulting fee to $5,000 a month. My mom didn't flinch. She just stared at the bedroom door, her breathing shallow and even. The recording was about 5 minutes long. Just as Alex's voice said, "Glad we're clear on this, Dad. Talk next month." A new sound joined the mix. The snoring from my bedroom had stopped. My mom and I both looked at the door at the exact same time. There was a creak of the bed frame, then shuffling footsteps. The door opened. My dad was standing there in his pajamas, his hair a mess, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he grumbled. "What's all that noise?" I heard Alex." My mom turned her head slowly to look at him. It was the most menacing movement I have ever seen. She was completely transformed. This wasn't the grieving widow. This was a woman who had just had the last 30 years of her life rewritten as a lie. "You heard him, did you?" Her voice was pure ice. My dad's confusion instantly evaporated. He saw the laptop on my lap. He saw my mom's face. The blood drained from his. He looked like a cornered animal. What is that?" "Sarah, what are you doing with that? That's private?" "It is," my mom agreed, taking a step toward him. "It's all very private, like your personal investment account, the one you funded with my mother's money." My dad's world just caved in. He didn't try to lie. He didn't try to deny it. He just stammered, his eyes wide with panic. "Helen, I was going to tell you. I was managing it. For us. For our future. Alex." He twisted it. He didn't understand. "I understand," she cut him off, her voice dangerously quiet. She walked right up to him. "I understand that my son, the one I have been destroying myself over, was blackmailing you. And I understand why. Because you are a thief. You stole from me. You stole from my parents." "Helen, no, please." He tried to grab her arm, but she recoiled like he was on fire. "Get your things," she said. He just stared at her. "What?" "Get your things." She pointed toward the door. "You are not sleeping in my daughter's bed. You are not sleeping in this apartment. Get your clothes from the dryer and get out." "Helen, it's 3 a.m. Don't be hysterical." That was the wrong word. My mom smiled. It was the most terrifying smile I've ever seen. "Hysterical? I am the calmest I have been in 2 years. You have 5 minutes, or I am calling the police and telling them my estranged husband broke into my daughter's apartment." She turned her back on him, walked over to the spare room, to Alex's shrine, and stared at the framed jerseys on the wall. My dad, pale and trembling, scrambled into my bedroom, slamming the door. We heard drawers opening and closing. My mom just stood there, her back to me. After a long minute, I heard a small choking sound. I realized she was laughing. It was a broken, bitter laugh. She turned around and her eyes were bright with rage. "He wasn't a saint, Sarah," she whispered. "He was just like his father." She looked at the laptop in my hands, then back at the shrine. "I think," she said, her voice dropping, "it's time we did some redecorating." My dad just deflated. All the fight went out of him. He looked from my mom's face to mine, and he must have known there was no lie big enough to fix this. He tried to say my name, to appeal to me, but I just looked away. He grabbed his coat, his keys, and walked out of my apartment without another word. The click of the front door locking was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. The silence that followed was heavy and awful. My mom was still standing by the bedroom, shaking. I was still on the couch, the laptop open, the evidence of our whole broken family glowing on the screen. My mom turned to me, and her face was a complete wreck. The rage was gone, and it was just this deep, hollowing shame. "Sarah," she whispered, and her voice broke. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I was so busy grieving a man who wasn't even real. I didn't see you. I didn't see anything." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and finally closed the laptop lid. She walked into the spare room. She stood in the doorway of the shrine for a full minute, just looking at it. All the jerseys, the trophies, the photos of his smiling face. "He wasn't a saint," she said, her voice flat. "He was his father's son. And I let them both fool me." She walked over to the wall, picked up his biggest, most obnoxious trophy, the one for MVP, and just dropped it into a cardboard box. Then she looked at the framed jersey. She walked over, ripped it straight off the wall, and threw it on the floor. "I think," she said, her voice cold and final, "I'm done downsizing. It's time to just throw things out." Final update, a few months later. It's been 3 months. My dad is living in a short-term rental across town. My mom hired a divorce lawyer and a forensic accountant. Turns out Alex's spreadsheet was just the tip of the iceberg. I had to give a statement to her lawyer about the laptop, which I then handed over. It felt like handing over a bomb, but it was the best feeling in the world. My spare room is my office again. It took 3 trips to the dump to get all of his stuff out, but it's gone. My mom and I painted the walls a light green last weekend. She's staying with me, on the couch for now, while she figures out her finances. The house is sold. Things are quiet. They're not good. Not yet. There's so much damage, and my mom cries a lot. But she's crying for the right reasons now. She's not grieving a fake saint. She's grieving the fact that her entire life was built on lies, by both her husband and her son. Last night, we were eating pizza on the floor of my living room, and she asked me about my work. She asked me about my friends. She asked me if I was happy. It's the first time in my entire life I can remember her asking about me, and only me, without comparing me to Alex. I don't know what happens next. The legal stuff is going to be a nightmare. But my apartment is finally my own. And for the first time, I don't feel like I'm the family's problem. I feel like I'm the only one who wasn't.